Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was saved by Lilac, Carol, and Milla, trained for 3 years to become powerful without a quirk, prepared for UA High, and chosen by All Might to inherit one for all the day before the UA entrance exam? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world was unfair. That was the first lesson Izuku Midoriya had ever learned, etched into his soul at the tender age of 4. But knowing the lesson and living through the daily, grinding reality of it were two very different things. At 12 years old, Izuku felt the weight of that unfairness pressing down on his narrow shoulders like a physical burden. The sky over Muzidafu was a bruised purple, the sun dipping below the horizon as the streetlights flickered to life, buzzing with the hum of electricity that powered a superhuman society. Izuku walked with his head down, counting the cracks in the pavement. His yellow backpack felt heavy, not just with textbooks, but with the scorched notebook tucked deep inside, Hero Analysis for the Future No. 10. It was fresh from a peer review by Katsuki Bakugo, which mostly involved explosions and being thrown out a window. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. The words echoed in his ears, louder than the city traffic. Izuku gripped the straps of his bag until his knuckles turned white. He shouldn't have taken the shortcut. He usually avoided the narrow underpass near the industrial district, but he had been so desperate to escape the school, to escape Kaken's mocking grin, that he had turned left instead of right. Now, the shadows stretched long and thin, warping against the graffiti-stained concrete walls of the tunnel. It was quiet here. Too quiet. Izuku stopped. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, a primal instinct that predated quirks, a warning from the lizard brain that said predator. A wet, scraping sound echoed from the manhole cover 5 meters ahead. I should go back, Izuku whispered to himself, his voice trembling. He took a step backward. The manhole cover didn't just lift, it exploded upward, clattering loudly against the ceiling of the tunnel. From the darkness of the sewers, a shape emerged. It wasn't the sludge villain of destiny, not yet. This was something solid, jagged, and hungry. The villain was humanoid, but his skin was covered in serrated, metallic spikes. He wore tattered prison fatigues that had been shredded by his own mutation. His eyes were bloodshot, frantic. A kid. The villain rasped, his voice sounding like grinding gears. Perfect. A shield. The heroes are close, need a hostage. Izuku's breath hitched. Move, he screamed at his legs. Run, but he couldn't. The fight or flight response had a third option, freeze. And Izuku was frozen solid. The villain lunged. He wasn't fast, but in the confined space of the tunnel, he didn't need to be. He closed the distance in 3 heavy strides, raising a hand that transformed into a cluster of 3-foot spikes. Don't struggle, kid! Just stay quiet and maybe I won't turn you into a pincushion. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. Tears leaked out, hot and stinging. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I couldn't be anything. The spikes came down. Whoosh. A sudden, violent gust of wind tore through the tunnel, smelling of ozone and crushed lilac flowers. Clang! The sound of metal hitting something impossibly hard rang out, vibrating in Izuku's chest. He didn't feel pain. Slowly, he opened one eye. Standing between him and the villain was a blur of blue and purple. It was a girl. No, a woman? She was humanoid, but distinctively other. She had long, purple hair tied back in 2 massive, rope-like ponytails that defied gravity. Her skin was pale, and she wore a blue sleeveless leotard with red accents. But the most striking features were the small, wing-like protrusions on her head where human ears should be, and a long, reptilian tail sweeping the ground behind her. She had caught the villain's spiked arm with one hand. She hadn't even flinched. Picking on children? The stranger said. Her voice was calm, carrying an authority that made the air feel heavy. That is behavior unbecoming of a warrior. It's actually quite pathetic. The villain's eyes bulged. Who the hell? Let go! He tried to retract his spikes, but the woman's grip was iron. Carol! Milla! Flank him! She shouted, not looking back. From the tunnel entrance behind Izuku came the roar of an engine. Izuku scrambled against the wall just as a green motorcycle defied physics, driving on the wall of the tunnel. The rider was a green-furred wildcat girl wearing black biker gear and a yellow bandana. She launched herself off the bike in midair. Coming through! Meow! The wildcat girl spun in the air, gravity seeming to ignore her, and delivered a devastating dropkick to the villain's shoulder. The impact was sickeningly loud. The villain roared in pain, stumbling back and releasing his grip on the blue dragon girl. And don't forget me! A high-pitched, cheerful voice chimed in. A smaller girl, this one looking like a flop-eared hound dog with cream and green fur, bounded past Izuku on all fours. She stopped in front of him, turned around, and clapped her hands. A shimmering, translucent green cube materialized out of thin air. Super Shield, activate! She chirped. The cube expanded, encasing Izuku in a protective barrier. Izuku sat there, mouth agape, his mind racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. 3 heroes? I've never seen them before. Are they a new team? The blue one has a mutation-type quirk, clearly reptilian. Dragon? Lizard? The green one is feline, high agility. And the small one? Emitter type? Hard light construction? But they don't have licenses visible. Their costumes are unique. The villain shook off the dizziness, and raged. I don't know who you freaks are, but I'll kill you all! His entire body bristled, spikes shooting out in every direction like a grenade going off. Lilac, watch out! The wildcat girl yelled, ducking behind her motorcycle which she used as cover. The dragon girl, Lilac, didn't hide. Her expression tightened. She dropped into a low stance, her legs sweeping out. Dragon boost! The air pressure in the tunnel dropped instantly. Blue energy crackled around her body, forming an arrowhead of pure kinetic force. She launched herself forward. She didn't run, she ricocheted. She moved so fast she became a blue streak of light, zigzagging off the walls, floor, and ceiling, shattering the spikes in midair before they could reach their targets. She appeared instantly in front of the villain, spinning midair. Her massive hair ponytails whipped around, slamming into the villain's chest with the force of a wrecking ball. Hair whip! The villain flew backward, skidding 30 feet down the tunnel before crashing into a pile of garbage bags, unconscious. Silence returned to the underpass, save for the idling engine of the motorcycle and Izuku's hyperventilating breath. The green barrier around Izuku dissolved into sparkles. The hound girl, Milla, poked his cheek. Are you okay? You look pale. Do humans turn green when they're scared? I. Izuku stammered. The wildcat Carol walked over, dusting off her gloves. Nice shot, Lilac. Although you totally stole my kill. I had him lined up for a wild kick. We aren't trying to kill anyone, Carol. Lilac sighed, straightening up and brushing a speck of dust from her blue outfit. She turned to Izuku, her golden eyes softening. Are you injured, little one? Izuku scrambled to his feet, bowing repeatedly. And no. I'm fine. Thank you so much. You saved my life. I didn't recognize you. Are you new pros from overseas? Your quirks are incredible. The kinetic output of that dash was at least Mach 1, and the tensile strength of your hair must be off the charts to impact jagged metal without sustaining damage, and he slapped his hands over his mouth. Stop muttering, Deku. You're creeping them out. The 3 girls exchanged glances. Quirks? Milla tilted her head, her long ears flopping. Pros? Carol crossed her arms, her tail flicking with irritation. Kid, we don't know what you're talking about. We're just passing through. Lilac stepped forward, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Her touch was warm, reassuring. We are not heroes. At least, not by your world's definition. We are travelers. Suddenly, the wail of sirens pierced the air. Blue and red lights flashed against the tunnel entrance. Carol's ears flattened against her head. Cops. Lilac, we gotta go. If the Earth military catches us, we're gonna be dissected in a lab. I told you we shouldn't have engaged. We couldn't just let him die, Carol. Lilac argued, though she looked nervous. She looked at the tunnel exit, then the other way. We need to vanish. Now. Izuku looked at them. They were terrified. Not of the villain, but of the police. They were unlicensed. Vigilantes? No, they said Earth military. Travelers. His mind flashed to the gossip forums on the internet. Rumors of illegal immigrants, or perhaps, something else. But they had saved him. They had stepped in when he was helpless. Follow me, Izuku blurted out. The three girls looked at him. I know a place, Izuku said, his voice finding a surprising steadiness. The police won't look there. It's a dead zone. I can get you out through the storm drains. Lilac studied him for a second, assessing his character. She nodded once. Lead the way. The sun had fully set by the time they reached Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. Or, as the locals knew it, the garbage dump. Mountains of trash, fridges, tires, broken cars, and household wastes stretched across the sand, obscuring the ocean view. It was a monument to apathy, a place people forgot. Izuku guided them through a maze of junk he had mapped out years ago during his lonely walks. They arrived at a clearing near the center, shielded by the rusted hull of a small barge and a wall of stacked shipping crates. Carol parked her motorcycle, killing the engine. Classy. Reminds me of the darker parts of Shangmu. Just missing the neon signs and pickpockets. It smells funny, Milla wrinkled her nose, but she immediately began digging a small hole in the sand to sit in. It's safe, Izuku said, leaning against a pile of tires, catching his breath. Nobody comes here. The heroes patrol the city center, and the police avoid the trash heaps because it's a logistical nightmare. Lilac stood atop a rusted washing machine, scanning the perimeter. Satisfied, she hopped down. You have our gratitude. I am Sash Lilac. This is Carol T. and Milla Bassett. I'm Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. He hesitated. You guys aren't from around here, are you? And I don't mean Japan. Carol laughed, a sharp, barking sound. Sharp kid. No. We're from Avelice. It's a long way away. A different planet? Izuku whispered, eyes wide. Basically, Lilac said, sitting down cross-legged on the sand. We were pursuing an intergalactic warlord named Lord Brevin. During the final confrontation, our ship took damage and warped. We crashed here 3 weeks ago. Our ship is cloaked in the mountains, but it's missing parts. Vital parts. We're stuck on this third ball until we fix it, Carol grumbled, pulling a candy bar out of her pocket and unwrapping it. And the food here is weird. Too much sugar. Or not enough. I can't decide. Izuku absorbed this. Aliens. Actual aliens. In a world where people could grow giant or shoot fire, aliens shouldn't have been that shocking, but these three felt grounded. They didn't feel like the comic book aliens invader types. They felt like people. So Izuku said, pulling out his notebook. He flipped to a blank page. That speed, that wasn't a quirk. What is a quirk? Milla asked, conjuring a small green cube and juggling it. It's a superpower, Izuku explained. 80% of the population on Earth has them. Explosion, zero gravity, super strength, it's genetic. Carol said, chewing her candy. On Avelice, we just train. I mean, Lilac is a dragon, so she has natural aerodynamics and water resistance. And I'm a wildcat, so I've got claws and reflexes. But the energy stuff? That's pure martial arts. The dragon arts. Channeling inner energy into kinetic force. And I use alchemy. Milla piped up. I can turn energy into phantom blocks. Izuku stared at his hands. Martial arts. You can fly because you trained? He asked Lilac. I don't fly, I boost, Lilac corrected. I use rotational energy and stamina to push against the air friction. It takes years of discipline. Why do you ask? Izuku looked down. The old wound in his heart opened up. The question he wanted to ask All Might. But All Might wasn't here. These strangers, who had saved him without hesitation, who fought with skill rather than biology, were here. Izuku's voice trembled. I don't have a quirk. I'm part of the 20% who are normal. Everybody says I can't be a hero. They say I'm useless. Deku. He looked up, tears brimming in his green eyes. If it's just training, if it's just discipline, do you think I could be like you? Do you think I could be a hero without a quirk? The silence stretched out, heavy and thick. The ocean waves lapped against the trash-ridden shore in the distance. Carol stopped chewing. Milla let her cube dissolve. Lilac walked over to him. She didn't smile immediately. She looked him up and down, analyzing his scrawny frame, his trembling hands, the desperate hope in his eyes. On Avelice, Lilac began softly, we don't have heroes in the way you seem to imply. We have soldiers, we have guardians, and we have those who choose to stand up when others sit down. She poked him in the chest. You stood in that tunnel. You were terrified. I could smell the fear on you from a mile away. But you didn't run. You stood your ground to protect. What? Your dignity? The city? I couldn't move, Izuku admitted shamefully. But you didn't look away, Lilac countered. And when the danger passed, instead of running home to safety, you led 3 strangers to a hideout because you sensed we were in trouble. That is not a power, Izuku. That is a spirit. She turned to Carol. What do you think? He's scrawny. Bones like twigs. Carol hopped off her bike and circled Izuku, squeezing his arm. 0 muscle mass. Posture is terrible. He'd break in half if I threw him at a wall. She grinned, showing sharp canine teeth. But he's got guts, and he knows this planet. We need a guide. Someone to help us find parts for this ship without alerting the heroes. I can help. Milla raised her hand. I can help train him. I can teach him to sniff out danger. Lilac crossed her arms, looking back at Izuku. Her expression hardened into that of a teacher. A sensei. Listen to me, Izuku. The dragon arts are not for the weak. They require breaking your body and rebuilding it. If I teach you to run, you will blister until your feet bleed. If Carol teaches you to fight, you will be bruised black and blue every single day. If you want to be strong without a quirk, you have to work 10 times harder than anyone who has one. You have to turn your body into a weapon of pure physics. She leaned in close, her golden eyes boring into his soul. Are you prepared to go through hell? Izuku thought about Bakugo. He thought about his mother's sad apologies. He thought about the Spike villain and how helpless he felt. He wiped the tears from his eyes and clenched his fists. The fear was still there, but something else was burning through it. A dragon's fire. Yes, Izuku said. Teach me. Please. Lilac smiled, and it was radiant. Very well. First lesson, the trash. Huh! Izuku blinked. Lilac gestured to the mountains of garbage surrounding them. You want to build muscle? This beach is a disaster. We're going to clean it. Every single scrap. By hand. Carol groaned. Wait, does that mean we have to help? We are guests here, Carol. It's polite to tidy up, Lilac said, turning back to the ocean. Besides, we need space for the obstacle course. Izuku looked at the miles of trash. It seemed impossible. But then he looked at Lilac, Carol, and Milla, standing tall amidst the refuse. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone. I'll do it, Izuku said. I'll do whatever it takes. 3 years later, the sun was rising over Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, but it didn't look like a dump anymore. It was pristine. The white sand sparkled, the water was clear blue, and the sunrise painted the horizon in gold and violet. Well, mostly pristine. Near the water's edge, a blur of green motion was tearing through the sand. Izuku Midoriya, now 15, looked nothing like the scrawny boy from the tunnel. He was shirtless, wearing baggy green combat pants and weighted bands on his wrists and ankles. His body was a corded map of lean, dense muscle. Scars, small ones from sparring, scrapes from falls, dotted his arms and back. He wasn't running, he was flowing. Pick up the pace. Lilac's voice shouted from atop a pile of rocks. Breathing! Watch your breathing! Izuku inhaled sharply through his nose, expanding his diaphragm. He hit a wooden ramp they had constructed. Flow like water. Strike like lightning. He launched into the air. At the apex of his jump, he tucked his knees. Dragon boost! He yelled, though no blue energy surrounded him. Instead, he twisted his body with such violent torque that the air displacement propelled him forward, extending his jump by another 10 meters. He landed in a roll, springing up instantly as a green motorcycle roared toward him. Think fast, Greenie! Carol laughed, revving the engine. She popped a wheelie, spinning the bike around to swing the rear tire at his head. Izuku didn't flinch. His eyes tracked the rotation. Wildcat style, use the environment. He dropped flat, the tire missing him by an inch, and swept his leg out, kicking up a wall of sand into Carol's face. Hey! Dirty fighter! Carol sputtered, blinded for a split second. That was all he needed. Izuku placed his hands on the sand and pushed, launching himself upward in a corkscrew kick. He tapped the top of Carol's helmet with his foot, lightly, just a tag, before flipping backward and landing in a crouch. Gotcha, Izuku grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. Carol wiped the sand from her visor. Cheap shot. I taught you well. Incoming. Milla's voice chirped. Izuku spun around just as 3 green phantom cubes came flying at him. He didn't dodge. He closed his eyes, sensed the disturbance in the air. Milla taught me to feel the intent. He snapped his eyes open. His pupils dilated. He saw the trajectory. He moved his hands in a blur, parrying the cubes with the backs of his wrists. Pa pa pa! The cubes shattered into sparkles upon contact with his hardened strikes. Time! Lilac called out. Izuku collapsed onto the sand, his chest heaving. How was that? Lilac hopped down from her perch, her long ponytail swaying. She walked over to him and handed him a water bottle. She looked at the beach, then at Carol and Milla, and finally at Izuku. Your form on the boost was slightly sloppy at the end, she critiqued, stern as always. You're relying too much on leg strength, and not enough on core rotation. Izuku groaned. I'll do another set. No, Lilac said. A small smile played on her lips. You passed. Izuku froze. I what? Reaction time is peak human, Carol said, parking her bike. Striking power is enough to dent steel. And you play dirty. She gave him a thumbs up. Your senses are super sharp, Izuku. Milla cheered, tackling him in a hug. You sense those cubes without looking. Lilac knelt down, looking Izuku in the eye. Tomorrow is the UA entrance exam, is it not? Yeah, Izuku said, sitting up. The written is in the morning, practical in the afternoon. You are ready, Lilac said. We have taught you everything we can about the Avalai styles. You have the speed of a dragon, the ferocity of a wildcat, and the senses of a hound. You don't have a quirk, Izuku, but you are strong. Izuku looked at his hands. They were calloused, rough, and powerful. He thought about the last 3 years. The hellish conditioning. Cleaning the beach. Searching for ship parts in the dead of night. Hiding his friends from the government. He had lived a double life. To the world, he was Deku, the quirkless loser. To the trio, he was their disciple. Their little brother. I'll make you proud, Izuku vowed. I'll get into UA. And once I'm a pro hero with a license, I can help you guys fix the ship legally. I can help you go home. Lilac's smile faltered slightly, a hint of sadness in her eyes. Let's focus on the exam first. We need supplies for tonight's celebration dinner. Katsudan, right? Izuku beamed. Katsudan. I'll drive you to the market, Carol offered. Hop on. Musudafu's shopping district, 1 week before UA exam, flashback. The shopping trip had been mundane until the explosion. Izuku had been debating between spicy or mild curry roux when the front of the convenience store shattered inward. Glass rained down on the customers. Nobody move. Put the cash in the bag. It was a villain, a brute with arms the size of tree trunks, made of rock. A heteromorphic type. The crowd screamed and scattered. Izuku dropped his basket. His instinct was to hide. That was the old Izuku. The new Izuku analyzed the room. One exit. Blocked by the villain. Civilians cowering in aisle 4. The villain is slow, heavy hitter. Police ETA 5 minutes. Pro heroes unknown. The villain grabbed a clerk by the collar. I said money. Izuku moved. He didn't think. His body just reacted to the drilling Lilac had beaten into him. He vaulted over the produce display, clearing it with ease. Hey! Izuku shouted. The rock villain turned. Huh! A kid? Izuku didn't monologue. He sprinted. To the villain, he looked like a suicidal teenager running to his death. But when the villain swung a massive stone fist, Izuku wasn't there. Wildcat style, wall jump. Izuku stepped on the villain's knee, then his shoulder, kicking off the ceiling to land behind him. What the? Dragon arts, cyclone kick. Izuku pivoted on one hand, swinging his legs in a wide arc. His iron-soled red sneaker connected with the back of the villain's rocky knee, the weak point. Crack. Arg. The villain buckled, dropping to one knee. Izuku didn't let up. He grabbed the villain's rocky arm, using the villain's own weight as a fulcrum, and flipped him over his hip. Judo throw, enhanced. The massive rock man slammed into the linoleum floor, cracking the tiles. The impact knocked the wind out of him. Izuku stood over him, breathing steady. He raised a fist, ready to strike again, but the villain groaned, eyes rolling back. Out cold. The silence in the store was deafening. The clerk stared at Izuku. The customers stared. Did you see that? Someone whispered. Was that a speed quirk? No, strength enhancer. He took down a rock type in 5 seconds. Sirens wailed in the distance. The trance broke. Izuku realized what he had done. He had used combat skills in public. Without a license. That was vigilantism. That was illegal. Kid! Who are you? The clerk asked, reaching out. Just a shopper. Izuku squeaked. He grabbed his backpack and bolted out the back door, disappearing into the alleyways before the police arrived. He didn't see the skeletal, blonde man standing in the crowd, holding a bag of groceries, staring at the retreating boy with wide, hollow blue eyes. The present, the day before the exam. So, katsudon is basically fried pork on rice? Carol asked as they unloaded the grocery bags at the garage. With egg and onions, Izuku corrected, placing the milk in the mini-fridge powered by one of Milla's permanent energy cubes. Sounds heavy, Lilac noted. Don't eat too much, or you'll be sluggish tomorrow. I'll be fine, Lilac. I've tapered off my training for the last 2 days to recover, Izuku said. Good. Rest is as important as... Lilac stopped. Her ears twitched. She turned toward the garage door. Someone is here. Carol instantly dropped into a combat stance. Milla scrambled behind a stack of tires. Izuku stiffened. Police? No, Lilac whispered. One person. But his energy, it's enormous. It feels like a sun. A knock came at the metal shutter. Young Midoriya? Are you in there? Izuku froze. He knew that voice. He had listened to it on YouTube clips thousands of times. It was deeper, more resonant than any normal human. It can't be. Izuku whispered. Open it, Lilac commanded softly, though she kept a hand near her sash. Izuku hit the button. The garage door rattled upward. Standing there, backlit by the setting sun, was a giant. A towering figure in a yellow suit with broad shoulders and a smile that seemed to defy the darkness of the world. I am here! The man boomed, striking a pose. Coming through the door like a normal person, Izuku's jaw hit the floor. All Might? Carol blinked. Who's the giant banana? All Might's smile twitched. He looked past Izuku, seeing the dragon girl, the cat girl, and the dog girl. He coughed, a spray of blood escaping his lips as he deflated in a puff of steam. The giant vanished. In his place stood a skeletal, emaciated man with sunken eyes. Way out? Carol and Milla screamed in unison. I can explain, All Might wheezed, wiping his mouth. He looked at Izuku. And you have some explaining to do as well, young man. About the grocery store incident. And, about your friends. Izuku looked at All Might, then at Lilac. Worlds were colliding. Come in, Izuku said, stepping aside. But please don't arrest them. All Might walked in, looking around the converted garage base. He looked at Lilac, who met his gaze without fear. I saw you, All Might said to Izuku. Last week. The store. You moved without hesitation. You took down a villain that pros were struggling to reach. I acted without thinking, Izuku admitted. Exactly. All Might pointed a bony finger. That is the essence of a hero. But I checked the registry. Izuku Midoriya. Quirkless. He paused. How? Izuku looked at Lilac. Lilac nodded. They trained me, Izuku said. For 3 years. Lilac, Carol, Milla? They aren't from here. They taught me that I don't need a quirk to be strong. All Might looked at the aliens. Travelers from the stars? I've seen many things in my career, but this takes the cake. He sat down on a crate. Young man, I have been looking for a successor. My power, it is fading. He lifted up his shirt, revealing a horrific scar that covered half his torso. Izuku gasped. Milla covered her eyes. I am running out of time, All Might said gravely. I originally planned to find a student at UA. But then I saw you. You have the heart. You have the instinct. And thanks to your unique teachers, he nodded respectfully to Lilac, you have a body that is already prepared for war. All Might stood up, his eyes burning with intensity. Izuku Midoriya. I have a proposal. I can give you my quirk. One for all. Give. Izuku whispered. It is a power passed down from generation to generation. A stockpiling of power. I want you to be the next holder, but the exam is tomorrow. Izuku cried. Ideally, I would train a vessel for months, All Might admitted. But you are not an empty vessel. You are a forged weapon. Your muscle density, your core strength. I can see it. You can take it now. He plucked a single blonde hair from his head. It will be a gamble. You will have zero practice. You might break your limbs if you aren't careful. But with your current training, I believe you can handle the torch. All Might held out the hair. Eat this. You, Carol muttered from the back. Izuku looked at the hair. Then he looked at Lilac. Should I? He asked. Lilac walked forward. She placed a hand on All Might's arm. She closed her eyes, sensing his energy. His spirit is pure, Lilac said. He is like us, Izuku. He is fighting a battle he knows he will eventually lose, to protect others. This power, it is a burden. But it is a gift. She looked at Izuku. It is your choice. You are strong enough without it to be a hero. But with it, you could be the symbol this world needs. Izuku took a deep breath. He thought about the tunnel. He thought about the cleaning. He thought about the future. He took the hair. I'll do it. He swallowed it. Nothing happened immediately. But deep down, in the pit of his stomach, an ember sparked. A roaring fire began to kindle, waiting to be unleashed. Welcome to the world of heroes, All Might grinned. Now Lilac clapped her hands. Since you have a new power source inside you, we have 12 hours to figure out how to integrate it into the dragon arts before you accidentally blow up the school. Carol cracked her knuckles. All-nighter? All-nighter, Izuku agreed, feeling the power hum beneath his skin. The dragon, the wildcat, the hound, the symbol of peace, and the successor. The UA entrance exam didn't stand a chance. The alarm clock on Izuku Midoriya's bedside table did not beep. It didn't get the chance. At 4 a.m. sharp, a pebble, flicked with the velocity of a small bullet, cracked against his second-story window. Izuku jolted awake, tangling himself in his All Might bedsheets. He gasped, his heart hammering against his ribs, before remembering. The tunnel. The dragon. The promise. He wasn't dreaming. He scrambled out of bed, changing into a generic green tracksuit that hung loosely on his skinny frame. He grabbed a protein bar, something he'd read was good for exercise, and crept out of the apartment, careful not to wake his mother. The morning air was crisp and smelled of sea salt and urban decay. By the time he jogged the 2 miles to Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, his lungs were already burning. He wasn't athletic. He was a nerd who spent his free time analyzing heroes, not emulating them. When he arrived at the entrance of the beach, he stopped. The mountain of trash loomed like a fortress of garbage. Atop the highest peak, a precarious stack of rusted refrigerators and crushed sedans, stood Sash Lilac. The rising sun caught the edges of her violet hair, making her look like a statue of some ancient warrior goddess. Down below, Carol T was tuning her motorcycle, the engine purring like a large, angry cat. Milla was digging a hole in the sand with enthusiasm that seemed illegal for this hour of the morning. You're late, Lilac called down. She didn't shout, but her voice carried over the sound of the waves with crystal clarity. Izuku checked his watch. It's 4:30. You said dawn. Dawn is when the light touches the sky, not when the sun clears the horizon, Lilac stated, jumping down. She fell 50 feet, landing in the sand without making a sound or leaving a crater. It was terrifyingly graceful. On Avel Ice, a dragon wakes before the prey does. If you want to be strong, you must conquer the morning. She circled him, her golden eyes critical. Stretch. You're stiff. Oh, okay. Izuku dropped to the ground, reaching for his toes. He couldn't touch them. Carol walked over, wiping grease on a rag. Yikes. Look at those hamstrings. Tight as piano wire. Lilac, are you sure about this kid? He looks like he's gonna snap if the wind blows too hard. He has potential, Lilac said, though her tone suggested that potential was buried under layers of awkwardness. Izuku. The training we are about to undergo is not designed for humans. We are adapting the Royal Magister's Guard training, combined with Red Scarf Bandit tactics, and phantom digging. Milla chirped, popping up from her hole with a shiny piece of sea glass. Right, Lilac nodded. The goal is simple. We are going to rebuild you. We aren't giving you a quirk. We are turning your body into a machine that doesn't need one. But first, she pointed to a rusted, cast iron stove half buried in the wet sand. Move that. To the pile over there. Izuku looked at the stove. It was ancient, heavy, and jagged. Just move it, without using your back, Lilac instructed. Use your legs. Center your gravity. Grip it. Explode upward. Izuku walked over. He grabbed the stove. He heaved. It didn't budge. He gritted his teeth, his face turning red. NGGGH. Stop, Lilac ordered. She stepped in, nudging him aside. She didn't look like she had super strength. She wasn't bulky like All Might. She placed her hands on the stove, dipped her hips, and in one fluid motion, the stove was in the air, resting on her shoulder. Strength isn't just muscle size, she explained, tossing the stove 10 feet away onto a pile of tires. It's leverage. It's kinetic linking. It's allowing energy to flow from the earth, through your feet, and out your hands. You are trying to lift with your arms. Your arms are weak. Your legs are the engine. Try again. That was the first hour. By the second hour, Izuku had vomited twice. By the third hour, he was lying face down in the sand, unable to feel his extremities, while Milla built a sandcastle on his back. He's dead, Carol declared, poking Izuku with her boot. We killed the guide. Good job, team. Now how do we find spark plugs? I'm not dead. Izuku wheezed, spitting out sand. He forced his trembling arms to push him up. Lilac watched him rise, a flicker of approval in her eyes. Good. Drink water. Then we run. Year 1, the breaking point. The first year was not about fighting. It was about suffering. Lilac called it conditioning, but Izuku mentally referred to it as the torture. The routine was brutal and relentless. Every morning before school, and every evening after school until dark. The curriculum was divided among the 3 aliens, each focusing on a different aspect of survival. Lilac's class, the Dragon's Path. Lilac was a perfectionist. Her training focused on mobility and core strength. She taught Izuku that speed was useless without control. You run like a human, she criticized one humid July afternoon, 3 months in. They were running through the labyrinth of trash. You stomp. You waste energy on impact. I don't know how else to run. Izuku panted, sweat stinging his eyes. Don't run on the ground. Flow over it. Lilac demonstrated. She broke into a sprint, her body leaning forward at an extreme angle. When her foot touched the ground, it was for a fraction of a second, acting more like a spring than a landing gear. She accelerated, running up the side of a shipping container, flipping off the top, and landing in a roll that transitioned instantly back into a sprint. Dragon Boost is a technique of channeling rotational energy, she lectured while jogging backward to keep pace with him. You don't have my physiology, so you can't generate the sparkle energy naturally, but you can mimic the physics. Tuck your chin. Engage your abs. When you turn, don't stop, spin. She forced him to do parkour. At first, Izuku fell. A lot. He came home covered in bruises, scrapes, and rust stains. His mother, Inko, fretted constantly, buying stock in bandages and antiseptic cream. Izuku told her he joined a CrossFit club that was really intense, but slowly, the stomping stopped. Izuku learned to land silently. He learned to look at a wall not as a barrier, but as a surface to kick off of. Carol's class, the Wildcat's Claw. If Lilac was the strict ballet teacher, Carol was the street brawler who threw sand in your eyes. Lilac is boring, Carol told him one rainy Tuesday under the shelter of the garage they had cleaned out. She's all honor and form. In a real fight? Honor gets you punched in the throat. Carol hung a heavy bag, filled with actual sand and rocks, from the ceiling. Hit it, she ordered. Izuku threw a punch like All Might. Smash. Wrong. Carol swept his legs out from under him. He hit the concrete hard. Oh, you telegraphed that from a mile away. You pulled your arm back, you took a breath, you made a face. If I was a bad guy, you'd be dead 3 times over. Carol taught him the dirty stuff. The Wildcat style was about agility and unpredictability. She taught him how to use his small stature to his advantage. You're small, Greenie. Like me. We don't trade blows with big guys. We bite their ankles and scratch their eyes. She put him on the motorcycle track. This involved Izuku standing in a narrow corridor of trash while Carol drove her bike at him. Dodge. She'd cackle. This is insane. Izuku would scream, leaping up a pile of tires to avoid being run over. But did you die? Carol would ask, drifting the bike to a halt. Reflexes, kid. Don't think, just move. If you think, you're roadkill. Milla's class, the Hound's Nose. Milla's training was the weirdest, but arguably the most vital. Close your eyes. Milla chirped. Izuku sat blindfolded in the middle of the clearing. Okay. Now what? I'm going to throw stuff at you. Wait, while bonk. A tennis ball hit him in the forehead. You have to feel it coming. Milla explained. Everything makes a sound. Everything moves the air. Even a look has a feeling. When someone wants to hurt you, the air feels prickly. It took 6 months before Izuku dodged his first tennis ball. It took 9 months before he could dodge 3 in a row. Milla also helped with his mental state. While Lilac pushed his body and Carol hardened his resolve, Milla protected his heart. After brutal sessions, she would conjure small phantom blocks for him to sit on, or share weird glowing green gelatin cubes she synthesized, which tasted like lime and electricity. You're doing great, Izuku, she'd say, patting his head as he iced his shins. Your aura is getting brighter. It used to be all wobbly and blue. Now it's getting greener and stronger. The cultural exchange. It wasn't all sweating and bleeding. In the quiet moments, between sets or during rainstorms, they talked. Izuku learned about Evil Ice. He learned about the Kingdom Stone, the source of their planet's power. He learned about the 3 kingdoms, Shang-Tu, Lilac's home, refined and ancient, Shang-Mu, Carol's home, capitalist and chaotic, and Shuegang, a frozen nation. He learned about Lord Brevin, the warlord who had invaded their world. He saw the darkness in Lilac's eyes when she spoke of the torture she endured at his hands. He tried to break me, Lilac told him one evening, staring at the campfire they built on the beach. He tried to make me give up my friends. That is why I push you, Izuku. Because there are people out there who will not stop because you are tired. Evil does not take rest days. In return, Izuku taught them about Earth. He brought them smartphones, old ones he refurbished, and taught them how to use the internet. Carol became addicted to YouTube videos of motocross and fail compilations. Milla discovered anime and was convinced magical girls were real. So, Carol asked, scrolling through a hero forum on a cracked tablet. This All Might guy. He's the strongest? The strongest, Izuku nodded, his eyes shining. He saves everyone with a smile. He's the symbol of peace. He looks like he wears pajamas, Carol scoffed. But if you respect him, he must be okay. You're a good judge of character. You found us, didn't you? Izuku blushed. I just didn't want you to get arrested. We appreciate it, Lilac said. We have repaired 40% of the ship's thrusters thanks to the scrap metal you scavenged from this beach. We are making progress. Year 2, the transformation. Middle school was a strange place when you were living a double life. By the start of his 2nd year of training, 3rd year of middle school approaching, Izuku had changed. The change was subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. His uniform didn't fit right. The shoulders were too tight. His neck was thicker. He no longer walked with a hunch, Lilac had drilled posture into him so deeply that he walked with a soldier's stride, head up, eyes scanning the perimeter. The bullying changed, too. Usually, between classes, Katsuki Bakugo would corner him. "Oi, Deku!" Bakugo slammed his hand on Izuku's desk, setting off a small explosion. "I heard you didn't apply for the technical schools. You're still shooting for UA?" The old Izuku would have flinched. He would have stammered. The new Izuku was currently mentally calculating the drag coefficient of a grappling hook he was designing for Carol. He looked up slowly. His green eyes were calm. "Yes, Kaken. I am." Bakugo stared. He waited for the fear. It didn't come. There was no shaking. No tears. Just a quiet, unnerving stillness. "You looking down on me?" Bakugo roared, swinging a right hook aimed at Izuku's shoulder to shove him. It happened on autopilot. Wildcat style, counter-grapple. Izuku shifted his weight. He didn't block the hit, he stepped inside it. His left hand came up, parrying Bakugo's forearm, redirecting the explosion upward away from his face. The class went silent. Bakugo stumbled, his balance disrupted. He stared at his own hand, then at Izuku. Izuku blinked, realizing what he did. He quickly reverted to his harmless persona, rubbing his head. "Ah. Sorry, Kaken. I tripped. My bad." Bakugo narrowed his eyes. You little weirdo. What was that?" "Nothing. Just reflexes. From dodging traffic." Bakugo didn't buy it. For the rest of the year, he watched Izuku with a mixture of anger and suspicion. Deku wasn't just a pebble on the side of the road anymore. He was a rock that wouldn't move. The breakthrough, the true turning point came during the summer of the second year. The beach was half cleared. The sand was starting to look like a beach again, though mountains of trash still loomed on the periphery. Lilac had set up a gauntlet. It was a high-speed obstacle course made of stacked shipping containers, narrow beams, and swinging tires. "You have to clear it in under 30 seconds, Lilac said. "If you don't, no dinner." "Brutal," Carol muttered, eating a bag of chips. Izuku stood at the starting line. He was shirtless, his torso gleaming with sweat. His muscles were defined now, lean, dense, like whipcord. He took a deep breath. "Don't run. Flow. Go!" Izuku exploded off the line. He hit the first ramp. Instead of jumping normally, he spun. The rotation added force. He cleared the first gap, 20 feet, with ease. He landed on a narrow beam. Milla threw phantom cubes at him from the side. Sense it. He ducked under one, cartwheeled over the second, and didn't lose momentum. He reached the vertical wall, 3 stacked containers. It was too high to jump. Carol's advice, claws out. Izuku ran up the wall. 1 step. 2 steps. Gravity tried to pull him down. He slammed his fingers into a rusted crevice, not to hold on, but to pivot. He swung himself upward, vaulting over the lip. He was at the finish line. Time. Lilac clicked the stopwatch. She stared at it. 28 seconds. Izuku collapsed on the top of the container, chest heaving. I did it? Carol flew up using her motorcycle, which she had modified with anti-grav plates they salvaged, and hovered next to him. You beat my time, Greenie. Not bad. Not bad at all. Lilac jumped up, landing softly next to him. She looked at him with pride. You are no longer a student of the basics, she declared. You are now an initiate of the dragon arts. Now we can really begin, Izuku groaned. That wasn't the real training? That was the warm-up, Lilac grinned. Now we teach you how to hit hard enough to break a robot. Year 3, the finishing Polish. The final year was a blur of high-impact combat. Izuku learned the dragon cyclone. He learned how to spin his legs fast enough to create a vacuum, then deliver a kick that felt like a sledgehammer. He learned the wildcat kick. A rapid-fire flurry of kicks designed to overwhelm an opponent's guard. He learned the phantom guard. By focusing his breathing and tensing his muscles at the precise moment of impact, he could negate damage, acting like Milla's shields. And he cleaned. The beach transformed. The mountains of trash vanished bit by bit. They found refrigerators, cars, microwaves, and miles of plastic. Izuku hauled it all away to the recycling center, trip after trip. The locals started to notice. People began walking by the beach again. They whispered about the ghost of the beach, a green-haired boy who moved heavy machinery by hand. 1 week before the exam, the beach was finished. The sun set over a pristine coastline. The white sand was soft. The waves crashed against the shore, unobstructed by garbage for the first time in a decade. Izuku, Lilac, Carol, and Milla sat on the seawall, watching the orange light dance on the water. "It's beautiful," Milla whispered. "You did good, kid," Carol said, bumping Izuku's shoulder. "We got enough scrap to fix the main hull and the life support. Just need the warp drive core now." "We couldn't have done it without you," Lilac said. She reached into her sash and pulled out a small object. It was a green bandana, identical to the yellow one Carol wore, but with a small dragon emblem stitched into the corner. "This is for you," Lilac said, tying it around Izuku's arm. "In Able Ice, this marks you as a member of our coalition. You are one of us, Izuku. A dragon, a wildcat, a hound. You are the Green Gale." Izuku touched the fabric. He felt tears pricking his eyes. He wasn't the quirkless kid who got beaten up anymore. He was a warrior. He had a team. "Thank you," he choked out. "Thank you for everything." "Don't get mushy," Carol punched his arm, though she was smiling. "You've got an exam to crush in a week. You better not embarrass us." "I won't," Izuku promised. His fist clenched, glowing with the imaginary fire of a dragon. "I'm going to be the first quirkless hero at UA. I'm going to show them what we can do." The final spar. 3 days before the exam, Lilac called for one last sparring match. "No holding back," Lilac said. "Come at me with the intent to disable." They stood in the center of the clean beach. Izuku took a deep breath. He dropped into a stance that was a hybrid of Lilac's elegance and Carol's roughness. "Begin!" Izuku moved. He didn't just run, he vanished. Dragon boost. He closed the distance instantly. Lilac spun to intercept, her hair whipped slashing out. Izuku slid under the hair, using the sand to reduce friction. He popped up into a rising slash, an uppercut kick. Lilac blocked it with her forearm, but the impact pushed her back a foot. She looked surprised. "Good power," she retaliated. A flurry of high-speed kicks. Izuku parried. Left, right, dodge, weave. He saw the openings. He felt the air moving. Milla's sense. He ducked a split second before Lilac's heel took off his head. He grabbed her ankle midair, Carol's grapple. He spun, using his own rotational force to throw Lilac. The dragon girl flipped in the air, correcting her balance, and landed 10 feet away. She laughed. A genuine, loud laugh. "I can't believe it," she said. "You actually threw me." "I learned from the best," Izuku grinned, panting. "You're ready," Lilac said. "Physically you are peak human. Maybe even slightly beyond, thanks to the diet and conditioning. Your technique is solid. Your spirit is unbreakable." She walked over and hugged him. It was rare for Lilac to be so affectionate. "Go to that school, Izuku Midoriya. Show them that power doesn't come from genetics. It comes from the heart." The night before, back in the present, inside the garage, Izuku sat on a crate, staring at the blonde hair in his hand that All Might had given him. The training montage played in his head, the vomiting in the sand, the bruises from the motorcycle, the tennis balls to the face, the sunsets with his alien friends, the feeling of finally moving that fridge. He looked at Lilac, Carol, and Milla. They were his family. They had built him up when the world tore him down, and now, the #1 hero was offering him the final piece of the puzzle. "You trained me to be a vessel," Izuku realized, looking at his scarred hands. "Even if you didn't know it. You built the cannon. All Might is just giving me the gunpowder." "Gunpowder?" Carol raised an eyebrow. "I like the sound of that. Explosive. Eat the hair, Greenie," Carol grinned. "Let's see what happens when you mix dragon arts with One for All." Izuku popped the hair into his mouth. He swallowed. For a moment, silence, then a heartbeat. Loud. Thumping in his ears. Veins of glowing red energy flashed across his skin for a microsecond, then vanished. He felt full. Like a battery charged to 200%. He stood up. The concrete beneath his feet cracked slightly. "Whoa," Milla whispered. "His aura, it's huge. It's gold and green." Izuku looked at his fist. He clenched it, and the air pressure in the room dropped. I'm ready, Izuku said, his voice steady. Lilac smirked. Good. Because we have 12 hours to figure out how to keep you from shattering your bones. Carol, get the punching pads. Milla, shields up. Izuku, try to hit me. Gently, gently. Right. Izuku threw a jab. He meant to use 5% power. Boom. The air's shockwave blew the garage door off its hinges and sent it flying into the ocean. Silence. Oops, Izuku squeaked. Carol cackled maniacally. Oh, this is going to be fun. Lilac sighed, rubbing her temples. It's going to be a long night. The hell camp wasn't over. It had just leveled up. The UA entrance exam was tomorrow, and the Dragon's Disciple was about to bring a storm. The week before the UA entrance exam was, by all accounts, supposed to be a time of rest. Athletic trainers called it the tapering phase, a period where intense physical exertion was reduced to allow muscles to repair, glycogen stores to replenish, and the mind to sharpen. For Izuku Midoriya, rest was a relative term. The garage at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was humid, smelling of sea salt, machine oil, and the faint, ozone-like scent of Milla's phantom cubes. Izuku sat on a crate, his legs vibrating with restless energy. He was polishing a set of vambraces, forearm guards made from a lightweight, impact-resistant polymer that Carol had scavenged from a wrecked jet ski and repurposed. You're going to rub a hole in that plastic, Greenie. Carol T's voice cut through the rhythmic scraping sound. Izuku jumped, nearly dropping the armor. He looked up to see the Wildcat reclining on her motorcycle, tossing a wrench in the air and catching it. She wore her usual black biker gear, her tail twitching lazily. I'm just checking the structural integrity, Izuku muttered, inspecting the straps. If I'd block a direct hit from a robot, I need to make sure the force distribution doesn't shatter my ulna. You worry too much, Carol sighed, sitting up. You've taken hits from Lilac. Compared to a dragon boost kick, a UA robot is going to feel like a pillow fight. We do not know the specifications of the UA robotics. Lilac's calm voice drifted down from the rafters. The dragon girl was hanging upside down from a steel beam, her massive pigtails defying gravity as she meditated. Her eyes remained closed. Underestimating an opponent is the first step toward defeat. However, Carol is correct in one regard. Your anxiety is leaking into the air. It smells like ozone and panic. Izuku slumped. Sorry, Lilac. It's in 7 days. Everything we've worked for over the last 3 years comes down to a single afternoon. If you fail, we try again next year, Milla chirped. The hound girl popped out from behind a stack of tires, her long ears flopping over her eyes. She was holding a soldering iron in one hand and a half-eaten rice ball in the other. But you won't fail. You're super strong now. Remember when you punched that refrigerator? I dented it, Izuku corrected modestly. You folded it in half, Carol smirked. Like a taco. Izuku looked at his hands. They were no longer the soft, unblemished hands of a fanda. They were rough, covered in calluses from lifting scrap, climbing walls, and striking sandbags. His knuckles were permanently slightly swollen from conditioning. I guess, Izuku whispered. But that's just physical strength. The other examinees, they'll have quirks. Explosions, engines, zero gravity, things that break the laws of physics. All I have is, well, physics. Lilac flipped down from the beam, landing soundlessly in a crouch before straightening up. She walked over to Izuku and placed a hand on his shoulder. Physics is a harsh mistress, Izuku, she said, her golden eyes serious. But she is fair. Quirks have limits. They overheat, they run out of fuel, they have recoil. But technique? Leverage? Momentum? Those are eternal. If you master the flow of battle, you don't need to break the laws of physics. You just need to enforce them harder than your opponent. She gestured to the empty pantry shelf in the corner of their makeshift base. Furthermore, anxiety burns calories. And we are out of food. We cannot send you into battle on an empty stomach. Carol groaned, patting her stomach. Ugh, finally. I'm starving. I could eat a horse. Or a cow. Whatever you earthlings have that has 4 legs and tastes like steak. We need to stock up for the week, Izuku said, standing up and grabbing his yellow backpack. If we're doing the final carb loading phase, we need rice, pasta, and, well, Milla wanted those specific jelly pouches. The lime ones? Milla cheered, vibrating with excitement. I'll drive, Carol offered, hopping off the bike. No, Lilac intervened. The motorcycle attracts too much attention. And we need to maintain a low profile this close to the exam. If a pro-hero spots an unlicensed vehicle with anti-gravity thrusters, we'll be deported to a government lab before Izuku can bubble in his name on the answer sheet. Walking. Boring, Carol rolled her eyes, but she grabbed an oversized hoodie to cover her ears and tail. Milla put on a large floppy sun hat, and Lilac donned a trench coat and a beanie that barely contained her hair. Let's go, Izuku said, checking his wallet. To the Kiyoshi Ward shopping mall. The Kiyoshi Ward shopping mall was a bustling hive of consumerism, packed with families, teenagers, and hero otakus. The air was filled with the noise of chatter, pop music blaring from speakers, and the occasional whir of a minor quirk being used for convenience. For the three aliens, the mall was a source of endless fascination and confusion. Why are there so many shoes? Carol whispered aggressively as they passed the sneaker store. You only have 2 feet. Why do you need 20 pairs? Fashion is a form of social currency here, Izuku explained in a hushed tone, keeping a protective formation around them. He was constantly scanning the crowd, a habit drilled into him by Milla's sensory training. Sector 4 clear. No heroes on patrol nearby. Police presence minimal. Look! Look! Milla tugged on Izuku's sleeve, pointing at a display window. It's the Green Man. Izuku looked. It was a life-size cardboard cutout of Kamui Woods, advertising a brand of eco-friendly hair gel. He is a pro-hero, Izuku whispered. His quirk allows him to manipulate his wooden limbs. Wood? Lilac raised an eyebrow, adjusting her beanie. He would be incredibly susceptible to fire. Or termites. Does he have a contingency for termites? I'll have to check his fan wiki page, Izuku muttered, making a mental note. They reached the grocery section in the basement level. It was crowded. Izuku navigated the aisles with practiced efficiency, grabbing bags of rice, discount pork, and vegetables. Get the spicy curry, Carol demanded, tossing a box into the basket. The mild stuff tastes like wet cardboard. Spicy it is, Izuku agreed. He checked his list. Okay, we just need the jelly pouches for Milla and some fish for Lilac. You guys wait by the entrance? It's getting crowded in the aisles, and I don't want anyone bumping into your tails. Good call, Carol muttered, adjusting her hoodie which was bulging suspiciously around her lower back. It's getting stuffy in here anyway. Izuku watched them retreat to the wider open area near the escalators, a central atrium with a fountain and a high glass ceiling. He turned back to the shelves, debating between salmon and mackerel. Salmon has better omega-3s for joint recovery, he mused, tapping his chin. But mackerel is cheaper, and Lilac prefers the texture. Boom! The floor shook. It wasn't a tremor. It was an impact. Izuku didn't flinch. His body dropped into a low crouch instantly, his center of gravity shifting to his heels. His eyes snapped toward the source of the noise. Screams erupted from the atrium. Villain! Run! The air pressure in the grocery store changed. The panic stampede began. People shoved past Izuku, knocking over displays of canned soup. Izuku abandoned the fish. He sprinted against the flow of the crowd, weaving through the gaps like water. Milla, Carol, Lilac. There at the epicenter. He burst out of the grocery aisle and into the main atrium. The scene was chaos. The beautiful glass fountain was shattered. Standing amidst the wreckage was a mountain of a man, easily 7 feet tall, with skin that looked like polished gray concrete. His arms were disproportionately large, resembling hydraulic pile drivers. I said clear the way! The villain roared. His voice sounded like grinding stones. He smashed a fist into a support pillar. The concrete crumbled like chalk. I'm taking the ATM, and if anyone tries to stop me, I'll bring this whole ceiling down. The civilians were scrambling, tripping over each other. Izuku scanned the area frantically. He spotted them. Lilac, Carol, and Milla were pinned near the railing of the second-floor balcony, blocked by a chunk of falling debris. They were unhurt, but they were hesitating. Izuku saw Carol's hand twitch toward her belt. He saw Lilac shifting her stance. No, Izuku thought, panic surging through him. Don't engage. If you fight, you'll be revealed. You don't have licenses. You'll be deported. Or worse. He made eye contact with Lilac across the atrium. He shook his head violently. Stay back. Lilac paused. She understood. She grabbed Carol's arm and pulled her into the shadows of a store entrance. Where are the heroes? Someone screamed. Death Arms is on patrol 3 blocks away. Another voice shouted. He'll be here in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Izuku analyzed. The villain is targeting the structural supports to create panic. If he hits that main pillar again, the skylight will collapse on the crowd below. The villain turned. He wasn't looking at the ATM anymore. He was looking at a child, a small girl who had tripped and fallen right in his path. Get out of my way, brat. The villain raised his massive concrete fist. Time seemed to slow down. The crowd gasped. The mother screamed. Izuku didn't think. He didn't weigh the legal consequences. He didn't consider his lack of a quirk. His legs moved. Dragon Arts, flash step. It wasn't teleportation. It was pure, explosive acceleration. Izuku engaged his quadriceps, calves, and glutes in a synchronized firing sequence. His rubber soles squeaked violently against the polished tile. Whoosh! He was a green blur. The villain's fist came down. It hit nothing but air. Izuku had scooped the girl up, sliding on his knees past the impact zone, using his momentum to carry them both to safety behind a overturned bench. Crash! The villain's fist pulverized the floor tiles where the girl had been a second ago. Huh! The villain blinked, looking at his empty target zone. Where'd the bug go? Izuku set the girl down gently. Stay down. Cover your head. He stood up. He was trembling, but not from fear. From adrenaline. The battle focus that Lilac had beaten into him was taking over. The world sharpened into geometry and vectors. Target, heteromorphic type. High durability. Immense strength. Low speed. Telegraphed attacks. The villain spotted him. You. A kid? You got a speed quirk or something? Izuku didn't answer. He stepped out from behind the bench. He was wearing jeans, a green t-shirt, and his red sneakers. He looked painfully ordinary. Leave them all, Izuku said. His voice was steady, projecting from his diaphragm just as Lilac taught him. The pros are coming. I ain't scared of pros. The villain laughed. And I sure ain't scared of a fast little rabbit like you, the villain charged. For a big man, he moved surprisingly fast, bulldozing through a kiosk. He swung a backhand aimed at Izuku's head. Izuku didn't retreat. Carol's Rule 4. The closer you are to a large opponent, the harder it is for them to hit you. Izuku stepped in. He ducked under the swing, feeling the wind of it ruffle his hair. He was now inside the villain's guard, right against his chest. Dragon Arts, palm strike. Izuku drove his palm into the villain's solar plexus. He didn't just push, he twisted his hips, channeling the kinetic energy from the floor up through his spine. Thud. It wasn't enough to knock the giant down, but it knocked the wind out of him. The villain stumbled back, gasping. You, little. The villain grabbed a metal bench and swung it like a baseball bat. Izuku saw the arc horizontal swing. Too wide to duck. Jump. Izuku leaped. He pushed off the back of the swinging bench, vaulting into the air. He flipped over the villain's head. The crowd was watching in stunned silence. To them, it looked like a dance. He's flying. Is that a gravity quirk? No, look at how he moves. It's raw agility. Izuku landed on the villain's shoulders. Get off! The villain roared, reaching up to grab him. Wildcat style, blinding scratch. Izuku didn't scratch. He grabbed the villain's forehead and used it as a pivot point, swinging his body around to the front, bringing his knees up. Double knee strike to the chin. Crack. The villain's head snapped back. Izuku backflipped off, landing gracefully 10 feet away. The villain staggered, dazed. His concrete skin was tough, but his brain was still rattling inside his skull. Concussive force worked on everyone, but the villain was angry now. His skin began to glow red. He's heating up. Someone shouted. Thermal expansion. The villain roared, and the concrete floor around him cracked from the heat coming off his body. I'm going to squash you. He rushed Izuku, abandoning all technique for pure rage. He was a runaway train. Izuku took a deep breath. Lilac said, "When the dragon faces the storm, it does not block. It redirects." Izuku waited. The massive fist came barreling toward him, glowing with heat. At the last possible microsecond, Izuku sidestepped. He grabbed the villain's wrist with both hands. The heat seared his palms, but he ignored the pain. Use his momentum. Izuku pulled the arm forward while sweeping his leg across the villain's ankles. Judo throw, Teenage Evil Ice variation. The villain's own massive weight and forward velocity became his enemy. He flipped through the air, his legs going over his head. But he was too heavy. He wasn't going to flip all the way. He was going to land on Izuku. "I need more force," Izuku realized. In mid-throw, Izuku shouted, "Dragon Cyclone!" It was a bluff. He didn't have Lilac's hair or energy. But the shout forced him to exhale, contracting his core muscles to their absolute limit. He twisted his torso violently, adding every ounce of rotational torque his 3 years of Hellcamp training had given him. The villain completed the arc. Slam! The concrete giant hit the tiled floor with the force of a meteor. The ground buckled. A shockwave of dust and debris puffed out. The villain bounced once, groaned, and then lay still. Izuku stood there, chest heaving. His hands were red and blistering slightly. His heart was hammering a mile a minute. He looked down at the unconscious villain. I did it. I beat a villain, without a quirk." For 3 seconds, there was absolute silence in the mall. Then, the applause started. It began with the mother of the saved girl, then spread like wildfire. People were cheering, whistling, and recording on their phones. "Did you see that throw? Who is that kid? Hey! Hero!" Izuku froze. The adrenaline crashed, replaced by cold dread. "Hero? No. I'm a civilian. This is unauthorized use of force. Even if it was self-defense, I caused property damage. The police will ask for my license. They'll ask for my ID. They'll find the girls." "Wait right there, young man." A booming voice called out from the entrance. Death Arms and Kamui Woods had arrived. They were pushing through the crowd, looking at the unconscious villain and then at Izuku. "That was reckless!" Death Arms shouted, though he looked impressed. "But effective. What's your name, son? What hero's school are you from?" Izuku backed away. I'm not. I have to go." "Wait." Kamui Woods extended a wooden arm. "We need a statement." Izuku looked at the second floor. He saw Lilac, Carol, and Milla slipping away toward the exit, blending into the crowd. Lilac gave him a subtle nod. "Run." Izuku turned and bolted. "Hey! Stop him!" But they couldn't. Izuku vaulted over the turnstiles, slid down the escalator railing, and dove into the crowd near the subway entrance. He used his small size to disappear into the mass of people, moving with the stealth of a stray cat. By the time Death Arms reached the subway entrance, the green-haired boy was gone. The shadows, high above on the third-floor balcony, hidden in the shadow of a maintenance pillar, a tall, skeletal figure watched the scene unfold. Tashinori Yagi, All Might, gripped the railing with a bony hand. His blue eyes, usually shadowed by fatigue, were wide with disbelief. He had been in the mall to buy tofu. He had seen the villain. He had tried to buff up, to transform, but his time limit for the day had been reached hours ago. He had felt that familiar, crushing despair, the helplessness of being the symbol of peace who couldn't save anyone. And then, the green blur had moved. All Might had seen many speed quirks. He had seen strength quirks. But he had the eyes of a veteran. He saw what the crowd didn't. He saw the boy wince when he grabbed the hot arm. He saw the sweat flying. He saw the mechanics of the throw. There was no energy emission, All Might realized. No mutation. No psychic activation. That boy, he fought with pure martial arts. He recalled the police registry he had access to. He had seen that green hair before? No, he couldn't place it. But the way the boy moved, it wasn't just training. It was instinct. It was the same instinct All Might had. The instinct that said move. Save. Think later. He took down a villain capable of leveling a building. All Might whispered to himself. Without a quirk. A cough racked his thin frame, blood speckling his hand. I need to find him. The aftermath. Izuku didn't stop running until he was 3 blocks away from the beach, deep in the maze of industrial warehouses. He ducked into an alleyway, leaning against a brick wall to catch his breath. His hands were shaking uncontrollably now. The burn on his palm stung. That was incredibly stupid, a voice said from above. Izuku looked up. Carol was perched on a fire escape, looking down at him. Lilac and Milla were right behind her. I know, Izuku gasped. I'm sorry. I panicked. Lilac dropped down, her landing silent. She grabbed his hands, inspecting the burns. Her face was stern, but her touch was gentle. You engaged a Class B villain without backup, Lilac stated. You exposed yourself to the authorities. You risked our cover. Izuku looked down at his shoes. I couldn't let him hurt that girl. My body moved on its own. Lilac's expression softened. The stern mask cracked, replaced by a look of profound pride. I know, she said softly. I saw. You were amazing, Izuku. Milla cheered, jumping down and hugging his leg. You did the spinny throw thing. And the knee smash. Kaboom! You were flashy, Carol admitted, hopping down. A bit sloppy on the landing, but you got the job done. Not bad for a hairless ape. But the police? Izuku worried. They didn't get a clear look at your face, Lilac assured him. And the crowd footage will be shaky. You moved too fast. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small tub of green ointment, Avelice healing salve. She began applying it to his hands. Izuku, Lilac said, meeting his eyes. Do you realize what you just did? I caused a scene? No, Lilac smiled. You proved us right. You proved that you don't need a quirk to be a hero. You defeated a monster that paralyzed a crowd of normal people. You are ready. Izuku felt a lump form in his throat. I am? You are, Lilac affirmed. The UA exam is in 1 week. And after what I just saw, I pity the robots. The news. That night, the incident was all over the local news. Mystery Vigilante saves Mall! Is it a new pro-hero debut? The shaky cell phone footage played on the TV in the Midoriya apartment. Inko Midoriya watched it, clutching a throw pillow. Oh my goodness, she fretted. That villain was huge. And that boy, he looked so small. But he moved so fast. Izuku sat on the couch, sweating nervously, pretending to do homework. Why yeah, Mom. Crazy, right? I hope he's okay, Inko said. He reminds me a little of you, Izuku. He has your hair. Izuku froze. Really? Generic green hair is pretty common, Mom, Inko sighed. I suppose. Still, it's dangerous out there. I worry about you taking the UA exam, Izuku. Even if you pass the written, the practical. She looked at him with those sad, apologetic eyes. The eyes that always said, I'm sorry I didn't give you a quirk. Izuku stood up. He walked over to his mother and hugged her. Don't worry, Mom, he said, his voice firm. I've been training. I'm going to be okay. I promise. Inko hugged him back, surprised by the solidity of his frame. When had her baby boy become so sturdy? His arms felt like rock. Okay, Izuku, she whispered. I believe you. The final countdown. Later that night, Izuku lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His hands were bandaged, soothing cool under the alien salve. He replayed the fight in his mind. The weight of the villain. The friction of the floor. The timing of the throw. It hadn't been magic. It hadn't been a superpower. It had been physics, geometry, and guts. He clenched his fist toward the ceiling. I can do this. I'm not Deku the defenseless anymore. I am the dragon's disciple. Outside his window, on the roof of the adjacent building, a dark silhouette watched the apartment. All Might lowered his binoculars. He held a manila folder in his hand, a stolen copy of the UA applicant list. He flipped it open. There, near the bottom, Midoriya Izuku. Quirk, none. All Might smiled, a true, genuine smile that reached his sunken eyes. Found you. He turned and vanished into the night, coughing slightly. The gears of destiny had begun to turn. The meeting was inevitable, and in less than 24 hours the boy who fought with the spirit of a dragon would inherit the power of a god. The last day of Aldera Junior High was suffocating. The air in the classroom was stale, smelling of chalk dust, teenage hormones, and the lingering scent of nitroglycerin that seemed to radiate from the seat in front of Izuku Midoriya. "You're all third years now," the teacher droned, slapping a stack of papers against his podium. "It's time to think seriously about your futures. I would hand out these career aptitude forms, but—" He paused for dramatic effect, throwing the papers into the air. "I know you all want to be heroes," the class erupted. Quirks flashed everywhere, fingers stretching, minor telekinesis lifting pencils, someone's eyes glowing in the back. It was a display of individuality, a chaotic affirmation of the societal norm. Izuku sat quietly, his hands folded on his desk. He didn't cheer. He didn't shrink away either. He simply breathed, a slow, rhythmic inhale and exhale. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out, that Lilac had drilled into him to maintain a calm heart rate under pressure. "Hey, teach!" Katsuki Bakugo's voice cut through the noise like a jagged blade. He leaned back, feet on his desk. "Don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some D-lister. I'm the real deal." The class jeered, but Bakugo just scoffed, small explosions popping in his palms. "I aced the mock exams. I'm the only one here with the stuff to go to UA. I'm gonna surpass All Might and become the top hero." "Oh, that's right," the teacher nodded, checking his clipboard. "Bakugo is aiming for UA." The murmurs of "oh" rippled through the room. Then, the teacher pushed his glasses up his nose. "And Midoriya is also applying to UA, isn't he?" The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of a predator spotting prey. Usually, the class would burst into laughter. "Deku? The quirkless kid?" But they didn't laugh immediately. They hesitated. Over the last 3 years, something had changed about the class punching bag. He had stopped flinching. He had filled out his uniform with muscle that seemed too dense for a teenager. And there were rumors, stories of him carrying stacks of textbooks that 3 people struggled to lift, or the time during PE when he outran the track team captain without breaking a sweat. "Midoriya," Bakugo growled. The air temperature in the room seemed to spike. Bakugo stood up and slammed his hands onto Izuku's desk. Boom! Smoke curled up from the scorched wood. "Hey, Deku," Bakugo hissed, his red eyes narrowing. "You think you can stand in the same ring as me? You think just because you worked out a little, you're not a pebble anymore?" Izuku looked up. His green eyes were clear, unclouded by the fear that used to define his existence. "I'm not trying to compete with you, Kaken," Izuku said calmly. "I'm just trying to be a hero." "It's not about you." Bakugo twitched. The lack of fear infuriated him. It was an insult. It meant Izuku didn't see him as a threat anymore. "You!" Bakugo grabbed Izuku's notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future number 13, off the desk. He clamped it between his palms. Boom! The notebook was charred black and smoking. Bakugo tossed it out the open window. "If you want to play hero," Bakugo sneered, "go play in traffic. Or better yet, pray for a quirk in your next life and take a swan dive off the roof." The class finally laughed, the tension breaking into mockery. Izuku stood up. He walked to the window and looked down. The notebook had landed in the koi pond. He turned back to Bakugo. For a split second, Izuku's stance shifted. His feet widened slightly. His shoulders dropped. It was the opening stance of the Wildcat style. Bakugo flinched, his hands coming up defensively. Then, Izuku relaxed. He slung his yellow backpack over his shoulder. "See you later, Kaken," Izuku said softly. He walked out of the classroom. Bakugo stood there, trembling with rage. Did that nerd just make me flinch?" The walk home, Izuku fished his notebook out of the pond. "The fish are okay," he muttered, shaking the water off the pages. "That's good." He wasn't angry. Anger was wasted energy. Lilac taught him that anger made you sloppy. Carol taught him that anger made you predictable. He walked through the familiar streets of Muzurifu, his mind wandering to the evening's plans. The UA entrance exam was tomorrow. Tonight was the final prep. Milla wanted those sour gummy worms. "I need to stop by the convenience store near the station." He took the shortcut through the underpass. The same underpass where he had met the trio 3 years ago. As he walked into the shadows, he paused. He tapped his ear. Wind direction changed, he noted. Smell of sewage. Sudden drop in ambient noise. Come out, Izuku said to the empty air. A wet gurgling sound echoed behind him. Sharp kid, a voice rasped. Izuku turned slowly. The manhole cover had been pushed aside, and a mass of dark green sludge was pooling up, forming a monstrous face with frantic eyes. A medium-sized invisibility cloak, the sludge villain muttered. You'll do. Just hold still, it'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Izuku didn't scream. He didn't freeze. He dropped his backpack. Target, fluid body type. Physical strikes are ineffective against liquid unless generated with sufficient rotational torque to disperse the mass. Vulnerability, eyes and mouth. The sludge lunged. Izuku moved. Dragon Arts sidestep. He pivoted on his left foot, letting the glob of slime sail past him. What? The villain grunted, turning into a liquid whip. I don't have time for this, Izuku said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small, metallic sphere, one of Milla's condensed alchemy bombs, a sparkle grenade. He pulled the pin and tossed it at the villain's face. Pop! A brilliant flash of green light and a concussive sound filled the tunnel. Arg! My eyes! The villain screamed, recoiling. Izuku sprinted. He didn't try to fight a villain he couldn't grasp. He ran toward the exit, his legs pumping with the rhythmic power Lilac had cultivated. But as he reached the sunlight, a gust of wind knocked him flat. I am here! The manhole cover flew into the air. All Might burst from the sewer like a golden missile. Texas smash! The wind pressure alone was enough to scatter the sludge villain into 100 pieces. The slime splattered against the tunnel walls, unconscious. Izuku sat up, rubbing his head. Whoa! All Might stood tall, his signature grin plastered on his face. He quickly began gathering the sludge into empty soda bottles he had in his grocery bag. Fear not, citizen! All Might boomed. The evil is contained. He looked at Izuku. And you? Good reflexes, young man. And was that a flashbang? Yes. Izuku scrambled to his feet, hiding the remaining grenades in his pocket. Just self-defense. From a hobby shop, All Might laughed. Preparedness is key. Well, I must be off to deliver this guy to the police. Wait. All Might. Izuku stepped forward. He wanted to ask. Can I be a hero without a quirk? But looking at the giant hero, seeing the strain around his eyes that only Milla's sensory training allowed Izuku to notice, he hesitated. Good luck with your schooling. All Might shouted, and with a powerful leap, he launched himself into the sky. Izuku stood there, hand outstretched. He seemed tired, Izuku whispered. Then, he noticed something on the ground. The soda bottles. Wait. All Might had jumped away. But the bottles were still here. No. 2 bottles were here. But the villain had been huge. Izuku looked up at the sky. He dropped one. Dread, cold and heavy, settled in Izuku's stomach. The Tatooine station fire. 20 minutes later, Izuku was running. He hadn't meant to follow the commotion, but the smoke rising from the Tatooine shopping district was thick and black. Sirens wailed, cutting through the city noise. When he arrived at the scene, it was chaos. A massive fire raged in the middle of the street. Cars were overturned. The crowd was pushed back behind police tape, and in the center of the inferno, the sludge villain had reformed. I'll take this body, the villain roared. It's got a great quirk. Explosions rocked the street. Boom! Boom! Izuku stood on his tiptoes, looking over the crowd. The heroes were there. Death Arms. Kamui Woods. Empty Lady. But they were doing nothing. I can't get close. Kamui Woods shouted. The fire is too intense. My giant form can't fit in this narrow street. Empty Lady cried. We have to wait for a water-type hero. Death Arms yelled, shielding his face from the heat. Wait! Izuku's mind raced. You're waiting? But the hostage. He squinted through the smoke. Milla's training kicked in. Focus your senses. Filter out the noise. Find the heartbeat. He saw him, buried deep within the green slime. Only a face was visible. The eyes were red, terrified, and watering from the smoke. Katsuki Bikugo. The boy who had tormented him. The boy who told him to dive off a roof. But right now, he wasn't a bully. He was a victim. He was drowning in sewage, struggling to breathe, his explosions only fueling the fire that trapped him. Their eyes met. Bakugo's mouth opened. He didn't say it, but Izuku heard it. Help me. The police line was a barrier. The heroes were statues. Izuku's legs moved. Hey! Come back! You'll get killed! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ducked under the yellow tape. He didn't hear them. The world narrowed down to a single vector. Distance, 40 meters. Obstacles, debris, fire. Target, the villain's eyes. He sprinted. It wasn't the clumsy, desperate run of the canon timeline. This was the run of the Green Gale. He moved in a zigzag pattern, staying low to avoid the rising heat. Not you again! The sludge villain screamed, recognizing the green hair. I'll kill you this time. The villain lashed out with a tendril of slime. Carol's Rule 3, if you can't dodge, deflect. Izuku didn't slow down. He swung his yellow backpack, weighted with textbooks, using the momentum of his run. He smashed the bag into the tendril, knocking it aside just enough to slip past. He was inside the villain's guard. Die! The villain tried to engulf him. Izuku reached into his pocket. His fingers closed around the last object Milla had given him. Not a flashbang this time, a phantom caltrip. A small, condensed cube of unstable energy. He threw it at the villain's exposed eye. Crack! The cube detonated with a burst of concussive force. It wasn't lethal, but it was annoying. The villain flinched, his grip loosening for a fraction of a second. That was all Izuku needed. He leaped. Dragon arts, rising claw. He dug his fingers, hardened by years of clawing through scrap metal, deep into the sludge. It felt disgusting, like warm oil and rot. He ignored it. He found the collar of Bakugo's school uniform. Let him go! Izuku roared. He planted his feet on the asphalt, the rubber soles of his red sneakers screeching. He engaged his core, his back, his legs. He pulled. The sludge was elastic. It fought back. You little gnat! The villain tried to reform around them. Kaken! Breathe! Izuku yelled, clawing at the slime covering Bakugo's mouth. Bakugo gasped, taking in a lungful of air instead of muck. Deku? Why? Shut up and pull! Izuku gritted his teeth. Izuku spun his body, using centrifugal force. He ripped a massive chunk of slime away from Bakugo's chest, freeing his arms. Die! Bakugo screamed, his palms igniting. He blasted the slime closest to him, creating a pocket of space. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's arm. Wildcat throw, he heaved. He actually managed to drag Bakugo halfway out of the villain's main mass. The crowd gasped. He's pulling him out. That kid is strong. The villain is losing his grip. But the villain wasn't done. Enraged, the slime mass swelled, forming a towering wave of muck above the two boys. I'll crush you both. Izuku looked up. The shadow of death loomed over them. He didn't let go of Bakugo. He braced himself, raising one arm in a futile guard. I bought time, Izuku thought. That has to be enough. Suddenly, the wind stopped. A shadow fell over them, but it wasn't the sludge. A hand, large and skeletal but currently swelling with muscle, grabbed Izuku's wrist. Another hand grabbed Bakugo's belt. I really am pathetic, a deep voice rumbled. Izuku looked up. All Might stood there. Steam was pouring off his body. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. But his eyes, his blue eyes, were burning with a brilliant, electric fire. I scolded you for not having a quirk, All Might said, his voice straining as he forced his muscle form to hold. And yet, you were the only one who moved. The villain swung his massive limb down. All Might inhaled. He pulled back his free fist. Detroit. The punch didn't even hit the villain directly. It hit the air pressure in front of the villain. Smash! Boom! The world turned white. A tornado of air pressure erupted from the impact point. The sludge villain was atomized, blown apart into droplets that rained down over 3 city blocks. The fire was snuffed out instantly by the vacuum. The clouds above the city swirled and broke. Silence. Then pitter-patter. Rain. It began to rain from the clear sky, the updraft having condensed the moisture in the atmosphere. All Might stood amidst the steam, his arm raised. Izuku and Bakugo were on the ground, safe. The crowd erupted. The cheers were deafening. He changed the weather. One punch! All Might! All Might! Izuku lay on the wet pavement, panting. His uniform was ruined, covered in slime. His arms ached. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. I moved. I actually moved. The aftermath. The scolding was inevitable. Are you insane? Death Arms shouted, pointing a finger in Izuku's face. You could have gotten yourself killed. You have no license. You interfered with a hostage situation. Kamui Woods nodded. You're lucky All Might was here. Vigilantism is a serious crime, kid. Izuku stood there, bowing his head. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Internally, however, a different dialogue was running. Death Arms' strength type could have punched the asphalt to create a shockwave to disrupt the villain's footing. Kamui Woods could have used his lacquered chain prison to create a net to catch debris, minimizing collateral damage. You stood there. You waited for the perfect matchup while a classmate was suffocating. On the other side of the police line, the heroes were praising Bakugo. That quirk is amazing, kid. You held out for so long. You should be a pro's sidekick straight out of school. Bakugo wasn't listening. He was staring at the ground, his shoulders hunched. He wasn't preening. He looked haunted. Eventually, the police let them go. Izuku walked away, clutching the straps of his backpack. He needed to get back to the beach. Lilac would be worried. She probably saw the news. DKU. Izuku stopped and turned. Bakugo came running up the street, panting. His uniform was torn, and he smelled like burnt sugar and sewage. Kaken? Bakugo stopped a few feet away. He was trembling. I never asked for your help. Bakugo yelled. I didn't need you to save me. I was fine. I was gonna break free on my own. Don't look down on me. You got that? You're still a damn extra. He spun around and stomped away. Izuku watched him go. He didn't call me useless, Izuku noted. He just said he didn't need help. It was progress. Izuku turned back to the sunset. He was exhausted. His adrenaline was crashing. That was a long day. He took a step toward the station. I am here. Whoosh. All Might dashed out from an alleyway, sliding to a halt in front of Izuku. He struck a pose. All Might? Izuku jumped back. What are you doing here? Where are the reporters? Ha! I shook them off. All Might laughed. Just because I'm big doesn't mean I'm not cough, th. Poof. Steam exploded. The muscle form vanished. The skeletal man stood there, wiping blood from his mouth. You! Izuku stared. You really are hurt. This is the price of peace, All Might wheezed, sitting down on the curb. But that's not why I'm here. He looked up at Izuku. The playfulness was gone. His expression was serious. Young man. I need to apologize. Apologize? Earlier today, I thought about telling you to give up. I thought that without a quirk, you couldn't keep up with this world. All Might clenched his fist. But back there, at the fire, the pros stood and watched. I stood and watched, paralyzed by my own limit. But you, he pointed at Izuku, you moved. Why? Izuku blinked. Why? He thought about the training. He thought about Lilac fighting a warlord to save a planet not her own. He thought about Carol jumping in front of a laser. He thought about Milla shielding him. My legs. Izuku whispered, tears welling up in his eyes. They just moved on their own. He looked like he was asking for help. All Might's eyes widened. The answer. The exact answer every true hero gave. Top heroes have stories about their school days, All Might said softly. Most of them agree on one thing. My body moved before I could think. The wind blew through the street, carrying the scent of rain and ash. That happened to you today, didn't it? Izuku fell to his knees. The dam broke. All the years of being told no. All the years of I'm sorry, Izuku. All the pain, young man, All Might said. Izuku looked up, tears streaming down his face. You can become a hero. It was the sentence he had waited his entire life to hear. But All Might wasn't done. I have a secret to tell you, All Might said, standing up. My quirk, it isn't natural. It is a torch, passed down from one holder to the next. Izuku wiped his eyes. Passed down? It is called One for All All Might explained. One person cultivates the power and passes it to another. It stockpiles strength. And now, it is my turn to pass it on. He extended a hand toward Izuku. I deemed you worthy. I want you to inherit my power. Izuku stared at the hand. But the exam is tomorrow, Izuku sniffled. How can I inherit it in one day? All Might smiled. Usually, it requires months of preparation to build a vessel strong enough to hold it. If a weak body accepts this power, their limbs would explode. He looked Izuku up and down, at the torn uniform revealing dense muscle, at the forearms scarred from sparring, at the way the boy held himself even while crying. But you aren't weak, are you? All Might chuckled. I saw you tear that sludge apart. I saw you tank a hit from the blast wind. You've been preparing for this, haven't you? For 3 years, Izuku nodded. With my teachers. Then there is no need to wait, All Might declared. You are ready now. Tonight. He checked his watch. Meet me at Dagoba Beach in 2 hours. Bring these teachers of yours. If I'm going to give you the keys to the ultimate power, I want to meet the people who built the car. Izuku stood up. He bowed deeply. Yes, sir. Thank you, All Might. Don't thank me yet, All Might warned, walking away. The power is heavy. And tomorrow, you have to prove you know how to use it. Izuku watched his idol disappear around the corner. He clenched his fist. The rain had stopped. The stars were coming out. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Lilac? Izuku? Lilac's voice came through, sounding relieved. We saw the news. Are you injured? I'm fine. But All Might is coming to the beach. There was a silence on the other end. Why? He says I'm ready. He could hear Carol in the background. Ready for what? To inherit his power. Another silence. Then, Lilac's voice, steady and calm. Come home, Izuku. We have much to discuss. Izuku lowered the phone. He looked at the city lights. The origin story was over. The prologue was finished. The green gale was about to become a hurricane.